Welcome back to Beyond the Brick and another episode of Ideas Spotlight. I'm Joshua Hanlon, and today I'm very happy to have Mini Brick Productions joining me to talk about several of his fantastic LEGO Ideas projects. And I do want to thank CloneArmyCustoms.com for helping support these live streams. If you are a fan of LEGO Star Wars and want some awesome minifigures and accessories to help add to your LEGO Star Wars builds, make sure to check out their website at CloneArmyCustoms.com. Now, Mini Brick Productions, if you are a fan of LEGO Ideas, is probably a name that is familiar to you because he's had a series of great projects on the website. One of his most recent ones is his Avatar project that is at 10,000 supporters. So we'll talk about that later in the show. Before we launch in with these projects, though, why don't you give us kind of a brief introduction to yourself and kind of your time in the LEGO community leading up to this?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. My name is Mark, but I go by Mini Brick Productions on social media. I'm a LEGO YouTuber, and I also have like an Instagram account, and I do a bunch of stuff on Instagram there as well. And I do a bunch of like drawing videos, custom sets, things like that. So it's just, yeah, it's a lot of fun. So yeah, eventually that led up to doing Ideas projects. So it's, yeah, it all ties in together.
So what was your very first Ideas project then? What was kind of your leap of faith onto the site?
Yeah, so I work closely with my brother. He's also a big LEGO fan. So he did the more older projects, the ones from 2017 through 2018. The one that I personally did myself was the full house that has the custom printing on it. So the one that came out in October of 2019, or sorry, Tintin, I guess was the first one I did, which was in September 2019. So yeah, I really enjoyed making that project, and it's clearly done pretty well. It's almost at 5,000 supporters. So yeah, so that's great.
Yeah, and interesting enough, I think you've got a couple different Tintin projects that are have quite a few supporters, right?
Yeah, so I've got the Tintin's Apartment, which is almost at 5,000, and then I've got the Explorers on the Moon, the Red Rocket, which is at just a little over 4,000. So.
So you've got a whole theme going here, just in separate kind of separate ideas. You know, since you can't put multiple sets in one idea, you can just get several of them all voted for at once.
Yeah, yeah. So the idea with Tintin was that one was more tied in with the movie, and the other was more tied in with the comics. So I really wanted to hit both fan groups. Yeah, at the same time, I guess.
Gotcha. You know, because that can always be controversial, and kind of when you're doing something that's based on an IP, you know, which version of that IP do you choose to do it? I know last week I did an interview with Build based on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. You know, everybody has their favorite version of that movie or the book, whatever it might be, and so trying to appeal to all the different fans of the IP can be difficult. So I think it's a good idea to kind of go for both audiences there.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, the Tintin projects are fantastic here. Definitely, if anyone's a fan of Tintin, should go over and check those out. But you've also got several others that we wanted to talk about. And the first of those, I think we'll start with, is your Pixar project. And this is recreating the very iconic, I'm sure many people will be familiar with this, you know, Pixar lamp and ball, and then kind of their logo as well. So this is an interesting project because it's, you know, it's not a particular scene from a movie, but it's the intro to the Pixar movies in general. So how'd you decide to go with this particular scene?
Yeah, so I'm a huge Disney and especially Pixar fan. So like, I just love the movies. I love everything. And basically this is the most iconic, I think, or at least one of the most iconic things about Pixar. So collections, if they're huge Pixar fans, and it's something I would love in my collection as well, to sit alongside WALL-E, which came out a few years ago. So yeah, I think this is one of the first things that people think about when they think about Pixar, because this is, you know, in a way it's kind of, yeah, like it's at the beginning of every single movie. It's something that really pays tribute to the studios itself. So I just really like that aspect, that it's not really tied in with any Pixar movie, but it's tied in with, you know, all of them at once.
Right, and I suppose you can reach kind of a broader audience with that as well, because then it's, you know, it doesn't have to be a a fan of a particular Pixar movie, but if you've liked any of them, then you've seen this before and you'll probably like this project.
Yeah.
So for me, what stands out here is the lettering on the Pixar logo there. I'm always amazed at the many different ways that builders can capture letters using Lego pieces. So what were some of the pieces you used here? Certainly some of these letters have some strange angles and tough things that you had to overcome. So how did you get these letters to work for you?
Yeah, so this was definitely the hardest part about the project. I knew I wanted to include the logo from the beginning, but obviously it was going to be really hard to make in such a small scale. So I have like a bunch of boxes that have like these sorted pieces in my collection. So I basically like dug through all the small pieces I could find. So I ended up using kind of some weird pieces, like in the A, there's like the tooth piece that acts as like the line in the middle of the letter A. So I thought that was pretty clever. I just like found like, you know, I was literally like digging through for random oddly shaped pieces, and I ended up making good use of that one. And then I made use of a bunch of clip pieces for the X and the R, as well as the A. The P and the I was, you know, relatively easy because it's pretty straight and not too much curves going on. But the X, because it has to be obviously built as like a cross, like it was definitely more difficult to do. I definitely think the execution could be better, but I really tried my hardest on this. Yeah.
Yeah, no, you can definitely see the effort put into trying to come up with unique ways to use pieces to do all those letters. Was this the first time you had tried to do a kind of detailed lettering like that?
Yeah. No, it was the first time I tried working with like different, like I think this was the first time, where I worked with letters like this. And because Pixar uses like the Times New Roman font or something similar to that, where it has the lines at the ends, it was pretty challenging.
But I think you still captured it well, and I think it's very instantly recognizable, the whole scene here. The other thing that really pops out at you when you look at this is the ball there as well. So kind of looks like maybe some Lowell sphere type of inspiration for some of that design.
Yeah, so I just basically found like I didn't want to reinvent the wheel, so I just went online. I looked for different versions of balls that people have made using Lego. And I based mine off of one that I found there, and then I had to change a few things to add a few curves, as well as the iconic star on the side.
Right. Well, it's a fantastic project, so we'll definitely have a link to this project in the description of the video. People can make sure to check that out if they want to go over and support it. But you've got some other great projects that we wanted to talk about as well. So the next one is your Polar Express project, and this is really fantastic, not only for fans of the movie, but also for Lego train fans in general, or people who like Lego winter scenes. I think there's a lot of different people who would be interested in this. So great project here. Why don't you take us through the design of this one?
Yeah, thanks. So the Polar Express it's very dear to me because I grew up watching this movie. It was basically like the only movie we watched in classrooms, like right before winter break. This was the movie you would watch. So it was very dear to my heart. So it started off, so I knew I wanted to make this project eventually. I had this in my head at least all the way back through August that I wanted to make this. And I almost didn't make this project because it was I was very busy in the months before leading up to Christmas. But I literally just took a weekend. I'm like, okay, you know what? I want to build this. I'm going to just go for it. So that's why it came out a little later, right before Christmas on December 23rd. But yeah, so this project was pretty challenging because it was the first time I designed a train. So it kind of showed in my initial attempt that it was really, there was a lot to improve on. But, you know, I had a lot of wonderful feedback from people, both in the comments of the project as well as on Instagram, who really, you know, showed me what could be improved on. And I tried my best to improve on those things. And this is, I think, very close to the final version for the project. I don't know if I will ever update it again, but I am happy so far with this. Yeah.
Did you reach out to any specific train builders? I'm thinking of a few right now that are just kind of some of the more well-known train builders in the Lego community have been around for a long time. Did you reach out to anyone like that, or just kind of post stuff out there and get people's feedback as it came in?
Yeah, so I didn't do that, but I did post it out, and there were a lot of train enthusiasts that definitely left comments. So it's definitely great to hear feedback from them. Yeah, so no one specific, but just a bunch of people who came forward.
Right. And I love how you challenge yourself, like we were talking about earlier with the Pixar lettering. And now you said this is the first time you've done a Lego train build. I think
Yeah.
that's always really impressive when a builder can kind of push themselves into new territory, especially when you're putting it out on Lego Ideas, a very public platform trying to get people's support. It's really great that you try these different types of building, building styles for your projects.
Yeah, it changes things up, so it's a lot of fun.
So talk about some of the hurdles you had to overcome with train building then, because they're not always easy builds by any means. You've got different, parts of the train here that you can see with the different train cars and engine. So what were some of the tougher parts for you, and maybe anything you learned along the way for people wanting to build their own Lego trains?
Yeah, so definitely the hardest part was the locomotive, the engine itself. So it was challenging because I had to work with like the wheel configurations, and I had to make it fit in with like a normal track, a standard track that Lego produces. So it was hard to come up with a base that would have all the wheels in the positions that they should be in, as well as try to get, all the valves in and things like that, all the detailing in to make it look recognizable. So that was definitely the hardest part. Other than that, I think the tender was relatively simple. The cars at the very end were a little challenging because I had to design an interior that would fit the 6-stud wide, I guess, configuration that Lego is using now for trains like the Hogwarts train and things like that. So I had to, work with like a little cramped space, but I think it managed to work out in the end. Yeah, so those, I guess, were the most challenging parts, but definitely the locomotive was the hardest part of all.
I know, and it looks like it, but I think you captured it really well. And then are these, is that sand red and sand blue for the train cars here?
Yes, yes, it is.
Those are some great colors. Yeah, that's definitely, the types of pieces that fans want from sets. So that's a good choice.
Uh-huh. Yeah, no, I hear so many people talk about how they want to incorporate like all these different colors and pieces into their projects in order to like get the vote from like AFOLs who want those pieces to be produced. Yeah, I don't really think about that when I'm building my projects. I think I should, but yeah, it's funny how you pointed that out. I never thought about that, but it is true.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of AFOLs, certainly mock builders, they look at a lot of sets as more parts packs than necessarily kind of the set itself. So if you can get those pieces in there that they're looking for, then they're much more likely to buy it. So I think it's always a good option if you have that available to you. So let's talk about the minifigs then, because that's something that always impresses me with ideas projects, especially when they're based on, a movie or something with kind of iconic characters in it. So talk about the minifig design for each of these and how the look came together for you.
Yeah, so the minifigures are definitely a key part of every ideas project that I make. And so I have a lot of background designing figures because I do a bunch of those for my YouTube channel and for Instagram. So yeah, so I design all these decals on Inkscape and then put them on through Mechabricks because they have like this this awesome like place where you can put the custom prints onto Lego pieces. So yeah, this was the final thing I worked on. So I worked on the train first, and then I went to design the figures. Yeah, I think it turned out fine. I think there were some pieces that weren't in the software that I was using. So for like Billy's hair, I would think that Will Byers' hair from Stranger Things would work better, but obviously I didn't have access to that on Mechabricks, so I had to compromise a bit. But yeah, I think overall they look pretty good compared to their movie counterparts.
Right. So do you do most or all of your building in digital building, or how do you decide which approach to take?
Yeah, so I start off designing, hands-on designing with the pieces I have in my collection, just to get a sense of, is this possible? Can I actually make this? And then to also fix some problems that, I can't really like visualize digitally. So it all starts hands-on, but eventually I move entirely to digital. So I use Bricklink Studio and then Mechabricks to really finalize everything, add some prints, and also finish building the sections.
Yeah, and then you get this great presentation as well, where you
Exactly.
make the project look really nice. So that always works well.
Yeah, exactly.
So, do you know how many pieces are in this Polar Express set, and kind of where you would see this fall in a price point if Lego was to turn this into a set?
Yeah, so this has 1,500 or so pieces at the final design, at the design it is right now. The price point I would hope to be 150 or less, but I wouldn't. I would expect this to max out at 200. Obviously, I prefer cheaper the better because it just makes it more accessible to more people who would want this under their tree or just in their collections in their cities, whatnot. But the price point I could see realistically is somewhere between 120 and 160. And that's without power functions, because I think power functions would just make this a little too expensive for some people.
That's true. They always add to the price with that.
Yeah.
But no, that'd be great. And I think, like I mentioned earlier, train fans would be happy, fans of the movie would be happy. When you're promoting a project like this, is there a particular area of like fandom you focus on, or do you try to hit all of those different areas in any group that you think might be interested in supporting it? What's the kind of promotion process like? Because you've had a number of projects now that have been quite successful and gotten a lot of votes. So you clearly have some experience with this.
Yeah, so for this project, the Polar Express, I kind of just threw it onto a bunch of subreddits as well as on Instagram. So on Reddit, I went to the trains subreddit as well as the model trains and the Lego trains subreddit. Posted there a few times, as well as the Lego Ideas subreddit, of course. And on Instagram, I posted a bunch of like posts with the pictures and this whole like instructions kind of to how you can support the project, because so many people on social media are probably not aware of what Lego Ideas is, so they don't really know how to support projects and make them real. So it's very key to let them know how it's possible to support. So yeah, it's just a bunch of different platforms, a bunch of different communities. So I tried hitting the Lego fans community as well as the trains fan communities as well.
That's a really good point you touched on there, is kind of making sure people are educated on how Lego Ideas works as a platform, because I do think that it's easy for Lego fans to take for granted, we're familiar with the platform and kind of how it works and voting for projects and everything. But for someone who's a much more casual fan and is maybe just a fan of Polar Express or something along those lines, they might not be familiar with it. So you find you really have to be kind of a Lego Ideas ambassador in a sense, in terms of making sure people understand how the platform works.
Yeah, exactly. I think that really came into effect with the Avatar project, especially because there were just so many fans that, obviously didn't really, or just like Avatar fans that were casual Avatar fans, but didn't really either have a bunch of Lego sets in their collection, or they just didn't really know about the Lego community and as a whole. So it was really important to let them know how to support this project and others like it.
Well, that's a perfect transition to talking about your Avatar project then, because even though this one is already at 10,000 supporters, I definitely wanted to make sure we chatted about it, because I know there are a lot of fans of the show who are big fans of this. I actually just started recently watching the show myself, so I have a much better appreciation for this project now. So talk about kind of your fandom of Avatar and how that inspired this project before we dive into the build itself.
Yeah, so I'm 19 years old, so I really grew up with a bunch of these cartoons as a kid. So Avatar was one of the shows that I had watched on and off as a kid. I never really watched it all the way through until last year when it came onto Netflix. And immediately I fell in love with the show because it was just so great, and I really loved the themes that were the animation, the themes, everything, even the music. I just loved the show as a whole, and I'm glad that you're enjoying it right now. So obviously it was a huge thing early last year with so many people starting to watch it for the first time, and so many people watching it over and over after already having seen the entire show. So I really I knew that so many people wanted this, and I had the skills to make it an ideas project. So I really just went for it. I had the idea in mind for a few weeks after watching the show, and then literally I just took 12 straight hours to literally cram this out. So I just sat down, I grabbed all the pieces in my collection, and I started building it, and went straight to building digital. Once I was done with that, went straight to designing the figures, straight to rendering, and then I uploaded it. So it was a really fun process, but it took a lot of work.
So this was one of those kind of quick doses of inspiration,
Yes.
then, which is always interesting to hear builders talk about. Is that unusual for you? Do most of the time, do you feel like you kind of have more of a process to it, or will you get those doses of inspiration and really just pound something out in a matter of a few hours?
No, it's definitely the usual for me. So many of my projects have come out that way. It basically just starts as an idea that I build upon in my head for a few weeks or months. And then all it takes is that little dose of inspiration and motivation, and I get to cram out projects in like a few days. So the Pixar lamp was one that took only a few days. I think 2 or 3 days is how long it took. This one took around the same with adjustments after the initial 12 hours. And yeah, so many other projects. I think the Mystery Shack was the only one that was like a long build that took a month to make with my co-designer. But yeah, a lot of my projects are really just a lot of motivation, and I just, work on it for days on end.
When that inspiration strikes, you just got to go with it.
Exactly. Yeah.
How did you decide on these particular characters and kind of this setting from Avatar, out of everything kind of the show has to offer? How did you decide to recreate this for the project?
Yeah, so I wanted to I'm a big fan of book 2 with their character design, so I went with those for the gang. So Zuko, the problem with Zuko was that I was wrapping up watching the show when I finished designing this project. So I didn't want to spoil myself by looking at the designs for the characters. And I knew Zuko's character was going to end up like that, but I didn't really. So I went like on like Google Images, I searched up Zuko, and I was kind of hiding the screen with my hands because I didn't want to spoil myself. So it was really funny in that sense. And then when I submitted the project, I finished the show, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't have done that, because now there's a book 3 character with a bunch of book 2 designs. So I did, yeah. But in the end, I think it worked out well because I really wanted to make this set recognizable. And I think Zuko's style in book 3 is more recognizable than any other style in the show. And then the rest of the cast, I think their book 1 outfits are more recognizable. And so I went with this scene of just having Appa and the gang, because I kind of wanted this to be like a starter set in a way, where you basically just buy this set and then you can build any other edition with the pieces in your collection. So I think as long as you have Appa and the gang, you can like go crazy with your creativity and make a bunch of other scenes.
Were you able to pick up any of the official Lego Avatar sets? I know there weren't a lot made, and it was a very short-lived theme, but have you ever gotten any of those?
No, unfortunately, no. Yeah, I was way too young when that came out. I was like 6 years old, I think. So I wasn't, obviously not a hardcore Lego fan back then, so I wasn't looking everywhere for them. And I never came across them either.
Yeah, and the struggle now is there were so few made that the aftermarket is just crazy for those sets. And obviously, as the show has become more popular, then there's even more demand now.
Exactly, yeah.
But yeah, that's what makes this project so exciting. So maybe we'll see a re-release and some more Avatar sets in the future. So remind me of where this is in the process, because there's so much that goes on with Lego ideas all the time. It's hard to keep track. When will we hear more word on this?
Yeah, so this is in the upcoming review. So the results I would expect, like I don't know when it's going to come out, but I would expect it to come out any week now. I think we can realistically expect it mid-February. I think last year's results were posted around the 15th of February. So I think that's when we can expect these results. Gotcha.
Well, that's exciting. Best of luck with that. I'm excited for it. So I did want to ask you about kind of your overall approach to Lego ideas. When you have a project idea, is it something that you're just building as a mock and decide to put on the platform, or are all these things that you build specifically for ideas and kind of attracting a certain audience and fandom in mind?
Yeah, so I build a lot of mocks, but my ideas projects are solely ideas projects. Like I don't believe any of these started out as mocks and transitioned into ideas projects, because making a project for ideas, there's a lot of thinking that goes on behind it, because obviously you have to think about whether or not it's going to be realistic for LEGO to produce. You got to think about size constraints, a bunch of things that just don't really come into effect when you're building mocks. So yeah, so I have a bunch of mocks on my YouTube channel, and those are totally separate from my ideas projects. My ideas projects, I sit down, I know I'm building an ideas project, and I go for it.
Great. And I did also want to mention your YouTube channel as well. So why don't you give people a little more info about kind of what they can find over there and where they can follow you online?
Yeah, so on my YouTube channel, I post a bunch of custom sets, things that I design digitally. So I have a bunch of LEGO Fortnite sets, a few Among Us stuff, as well as some, yeah, just a bunch of drawing videos as well. So I have like a Gravity Falls CMF draft, a Steven Universe CMF draft. So many things that revolve around LEGO. So yeah, so you can find a bunch of that on my YouTube, and on my Instagram, I post mainly right now. It's kind of become like an ideas platform, a way to spread awareness of my ideas projects. But it used to be a lot of just, I really like designing characters and rendering them. So I did that a bunch on my Instagram as well.
And is that Mini Brick Productions across all those platforms?
Yeah, so it's Mini Brick Minifigs on Instagram and Mini Brick Productions on YouTube.
Okay, good stuff. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. You have some fantastic projects, and as I mentioned earlier, we'll have links to the different ideas projects that we talked about, so people can go over and support those, and then also make sure to check out his Instagram and YouTube as well to see what projects he brings in the future. I'm sure there'll be more ideas projects and more mocks coming, so lots to do there. Thank you so much.
No, thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
For sure. And thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back with